went forward now, linking with the Jamaica reparation movement, specifically who had that duty, because those documents, them, this is what they extract now out of that Durban conference. So for I and I now to deal with as the people, because it is the victim who must declare and claim the redress for these atrocities for over 500 years. So the duty now is for the people now to prepare representation and the demands, and hence now within that framework of the Jamaica reparation movement, I am specifically indicated I not even a Jamaica thing. Is the Rastafari community mission.
Greetings, honorable family. This is a public announcement. Jah Consuming Fire, brand new EP out now by Ija Star, featuring artists like Empress Matiposa out of the VI Virgin Island. This EP consists of 7 tracks. Songs like Life, No Dignity, 360 Degrees, Plea My Cause. This EP is out on all digital download platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon, and much more. 360 Degree is blazing. Temperature so high. We are steam and blaze with Charlie Sana, Hail Selassie I. Out now, Jah Consuming Fire. Check it out.
No call me no dark or trust me, fool. You not have to rate this.
Blessed love, warm welcome, honorable family. This is another edition of the Mindset Program, and it's a great honor to have the item here. It's also a great honor to have my royal and honorable guest, Virgin from out of Jamaica, Rastafari Virgin. He's a member of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress. He's also a member of the Rastafari Millennium Council. And I'm talking about no other prophet than Honourable Prophet Greg. Blessed love, my Lord. Warm welcome.
Yes, beloved one, do give thanks and, for the invite as usual, the mindset moving through same way. And as per usual, within the foundation of respect, I greet and salute everyone in the name of the Most High Empire, Selassie Jah, Rastafari Foundation.
Rastafari.
It's the balance of the rebirth going through Empress Menin as for Selassie. So Holy Emmanuel I Selassie I, the Rastafari, give thanks for the invite, give thanks to be here. Give thanks to be up front and live and direct.
My Lord, glorified. It's a great honor to have the eye here, my Lord. I hear so much about the eye, and to meet the eye this way, it's an honor and a great pleasure, having the eye on the platform, my Lord, so that, we can share, information that will uplift I and I as a people and also as a global nation, my Lord. So, give thanks. Rastafari. Yes, Honourable Prophet Greg. So, talk to me about, Rastafari. How did that start out for the eye? When did that start for the eye?
Well, basically, the foundation of it really manifests in Clarendon, where even Iman is right now. Having left this journey within the Babylon settings, you don't know how Rastafari move things already have and I find myself located in the Clarendon link up. So from there, so now we link with the Honourable Priest Brown. I think there is some recent interview with him because he reside in Clarendon as well. Even linked up with the Nyabinghi family down at Scotch Pass.
Yes, sir.
And from there on now we start to work some program. Brasmanga. It was a good link up now to start up a program, Cutting Edge Cultural Unity in Maypen. I think there's an anniversary for Black History Month, So there's a still slot there in every February where the ones gather. So basically the momentum gather from there. but within the faithful aspect of things, you know,
Yeah.
the faith is really Bobo Shanti. So even with the tradition of Rastafari, I and I had to go forward to the Congress, you know, and see it up in the sense of the duties of honoring the whole operation and the legacy of the Congress, although still battling, you don't know, for the independence of man residing in Clarendon. So even at that time now, and I did have to even sit up in the Congress, still though operating and recognized within the office of the prophet. That is where I met that declaration and sit up in those works of the prophet. And because of the same works now that is going through even now, within the reasoning of the presentation down in Clarendon as swapback, them call it swapback rallies. You know, once within the, as you say, Black History Month, we invite special guests. So it was really a vibrant energy towards Rastafari, the fullness of Rastafari, the mission of Rastafari. And it is from really there now, the continuity and the legacy, linking, you know, with the Congress reality as a member within the office of the prophet now. You find things now begin to escalate come 2001. I believe that is one of the most significant year for the Rastafari movement in general. Because that year was the year when the United Nations World Conference against racism and xenophobia took place in South Africa. I believe it was in late August into September, that dealt with the matter of the injustices looking at colonialism and chattel slavery, and laid out the foundation where remedies can be attained to from the heads of government levels, you don't know, United Nations. So at that forum, at that conference, 168 nations signed on to the Durban Declaration. And from there now, paragraph 158 outline the remedies and the program to activate, starting with debt relief coming out of most likely and obviously the IMF program of structural adjustment, which impact most of the developing countries which are African descendant based, leading down to the last aspects of the last three of it is with restitution of artifacts that were stolen from the continent, dealing with human trafficking of women and children, and then the final one is facilitating return and welcome return from ones from the African diaspora, you know. So that basically boils down to the return of I&I, the rights of return. So that was the framework now that opened again the doors to look at the negotiation from government to government levels, you know, in dealing with the issue of reparation, repatriation, and the like, continuing the Back to Africa program that initiated itself from the 1958 Nyabinghi Order Convention that led into the 1961 Back to Africa mission. So basically, in the setting of workmanship now, in the role of being an honorable prophet, this is where I find the necessary duty now to continue this process as an honorable prophet for the Congress to carry out these essential works for the mission of Rastafari. Can I
ask the I do?
Yes, man.
Why the high haven't pick up the role of a leading priest, you know?
All right. Well, I give thanks because that was basically what Iman was meant to address right now. Because after the insert of that Durban Declaration, because the mission to Africa, even a technical report was issued in 1962. However, the Jamaica independence of August locked down the whole of that. So there was no mission to Africa again.
Again, true.
So it was the Durban now that opened the doors again in 2001. That at that conference now, NGOs, 40% of ones them who attended were non-government entities, civil body representative, indigenous people, declaring these rights where they were being impacted by colonialism, chattel slavery. So it's out of that now. Documents came forward, the Durban Declaration and Program of Action that requires now civil bodies to put forward their documentation and claims for redress. So naturally, the one who attended was Sister Barbara Blake Hannah. I think she went on the delegation with the government, coming back with those documentation and introduce it at the Haile Selassie High School, because that is where the CRO, or rather the RCO, the Rastafari Centralizing Organization, had their headquarters and meetings. So she presented this information at one of those meetings. And it is from there now, we who attended it now, because from we hear that we know say, yeah man, everything stand up and say, this is it, this is where I and I negotiation, we open again, because government, they lock it down. So I received the documents and carried them up directly to the Congress, because as I said, that is where I and I connect. Don't care if they live in a Clarendon, we move around. But once important matters of this nature arise, we take it to the Congress. And presenting it to Honourable Priest Jesse Jesus. He was at the time in 2002, 2003 within the palace in jail. So I went straight to Jesse, we call him Jesse, Honourable Jesse, Priest Jesse.
Yes, sir.
And present to him the documents. The Honourable Priest Brown was there as well. So it is from that occasion now that I was issued, stamped a constitution, and went with the blessing to say, go forth and carry out the work of King Emmanuel Charles Edward, the work as his father. That was the instruction given the constitution. So because of the nature of the work, as a statesman, because the prophet duty is statesmanship, governance, dealing with governmental aspect of things. It is from that time to this time, the office of the prophet maintain that integrity to carry out that focus mission towards governance, statesmanship in dealing with the matter of repatriation and reparation. And I'm going to share two more little things with the eye how to cement that. Out of that documentation now and presentation of the Durban Declaration, here comes the Rastafari Global Meeting of 2003, when all of this now was brought to the attention of the international family. Everyone gathered, and it was there now a panel discussion that I and I made that presentation outlining the importance of repatriation, etc., focusing what we need to do as the community now in preparing a document now to submit to the United Nations. Prior to that though, the Congress already established a 4-point agenda program and a 17-page petition to the OAU from 1991. So that petition looked to represent black people, not just Rastafari, black people rights for the return. So that even linked it more strenuous and more strong for the reserve to maintain the integrity of the office of the prophet in going forward, because we have to now link with the people them.
True.
It's not just Rastafari.
True,
so
true.
It is from that foundation now, I went forward now, linking with the Jamaica reparation movement, specifically who had that duty, because those documents, them, this is what they extract now out of that Durban conference. So for I now to deal with as the people, because it is the victim who must declare and claim the redress for these atrocities for over 500 years. So the duty now is for the people now to prepare representation and the demands, and hence now within that framework of the Jamaica reparation movement, I am specifically indicated I not deal with no Jamaica thing. is the Rastafari community mission. I and I depend and will work towards getting a document, compilation document, so we can get this into the United Nations where I and I claims can be represented. So that is basically it, Honourable.
Rastafari. How do I interpret, the spiritual and political dimension of repatriation in this time, my lord, especially for people who may never physically return to Africa?
All right, and that's a wonderful question. Look at the reality of the speech by the emperor.
Yeah.
I'm going to take two examples of how it ties in. Starting with the speech at the inauguration of the OAU. The emperor had declared that within aspect of the speech, he said, Africa has now reborn as a free continent, and Africans have now been reborn as free people. He said, those Africans who held unswervingly to a vision of an Africa emancipated from political, economic, and spiritual domination will be remembered and be revered wherever Africa meet. So even in that speech, him say, who reject also the judgment passed upon them by the colonizers. So we know the whole framework now of removing from that dominance of white supremacy, European dominance of chattel slavery and colonialism is three aspects of our liberation that needs to be addressed to get holistic emancipation. So this thing goes right back to the 1958 convention, because here it is now. The emperor himself declared political emancipation from colonial dominance.
Yes, I.
Economic emancipation from European colonialism, and also spiritual. So the spiritual aspect of this emancipation is where Rastafari rise up now to address that matter, because in 1930, when the emperor was crowned and Marcus Messiah Garvey declared to his followers in his newspaper, say, I and I must go and rally around Emperor Rastafari. Garveyites within the foundation of the movement, you're talking Howell, Hines, Hibbert, and Dunkley as the forerunner, the four peer, and the four ward. They were Garveyites. Howell now became the more prominent of the four. And by 1937, the government of the day in Jamaica started to complain to the monarchy. Said there is a cultism rising in Jamaica named Rastafari. Now look at the word, cultism. And that clearly specifically address spirituality. Because when you call people cult and all them things, you talk about some little religious fanatic.
Yeah.
So from there, them start to recognize now, because they complain that we were declaring the emperor as God. And at that time, the Hoylites, them, all of those one, them, they say Christ in his kingly character return. So that showcases the spiritual aspect of things now, because we don't identify the economics with the Honourable Prophet Marcus Garvey. No one can go around that foundation of Pan-Africanism, what he did from the West, in moving this mission to Africa, which I and I take up now within the spiritual aspect of things, declaring the divinity of the emperor. And the political aspect of it now, giving the father of Africa, knowing that the throne room and the 1955 revised Ethiopian constitution that the emperor established, outlining the political power, because it is out of the throne room, the constitution shows that he has the rulership over both the economics, which is the parliament structure, and over the church, which he established. And Article 70 shows the outline of that crown council operation, which has to respond to him. So the second aspect of the speech, so that is the first one. In 1966 now, when he came to Jamaica, he came reclaiming his royal subject and declared to the Parliament of Jamaica that we are not only just Africans, but Ethiopian blood relatives now. And in so be doing now, the onus now comes now back to the people to decide which monarchy, because from the emperor come down off him throne and come to the parliament, heads of state, and declare that he owns Ethiopians as bloodline and represent them. It is now for the people to declare to the governments now, particularly starting with Jamaica, based on that speech, to declare which majesty and high I and I is going to serve. Because the head of state at that time was Queen Elizabeth. She's still, well, the regime under the King Charles now, right? Is still the head of state until the Republic thing, according to what them said them do. Chip in. But the still head of state now is still the crown of Britain. And we as I and I as Rastafari, from that time, even prior to that, from the 1930s, declares, no, the emperor is I and I divine sovereign. And our sovereignty is Ethiopia. And all of that was now fleshed out at the 1958 convention. This was the first phase now, because that convention now, there was a West Indies Federation election going through to delink themselves from the colonial power, same way now. And we said at that time, no, but if you're going to that warm to emancipation, warm to our rights to self-determination, to repatriate, you never fulfilled that duty. So that convention in 1958, headed by the leaders under the Nyabinghi order at that time, because that is when the Nyabinghi order was officially unveiled publicly. Before that, prior to that, it was like Kumina, African spiritualism, headed by the Hoylites and things. But the Nyabinghi order, that first convention of March to combat the West Indies Federation, was saying the Rastafari is still demanding the fullness of emancipation, even as how it is written out in I Royal Rastafari Creed. So in essence now, the spiritual aspect, as how the I had asked the question, is that foundation that Rastafari links into the prophecy. Because here you have now the emperor declaring at the OAU inauguration that I and I reborn. No, what is reborn? I want really meditate what that really means. For I and I as African and the African continent itself to be reborn. Now, within the levels of the church people then, this is a language where them use to say you're born again.
Yes, sir.
You're baptized. You're born again. So here's the spiritual aspect of things that the emperor is invoking at the OAU, inclining about the rebirth. And once one reborn, in take on his indigenous identity, his sovereign identity, his divine identity. Because you're reborn into yourself, who you are as a person. So once you are reborn as an African, you shed the colonial attachments and revert to the days when Africa was never colonized. So you touch back to your indigenous foundation, your royal sovereign foundation of royal African sons and daughters before the invasion of colonialism. That is a powerful statement when the emperor said, I and I reborn. And once keep looking out of it. So the very rebirth now to capture everything politically, economically, and spiritually now is the mission now of total emancipation, what the emperor now has declared. And in Rastafari, we unapologetically, without any apology, we declare the emperor as how he stands as the father of the OAU. This is why we say as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, he is I and I, God Almighty, without any apology. Rastafari. So this just moved Rastafari now to take full control of the spiritual aspect of things, linking it forward to that speech. And as a matter of fact, you can even now link it into the Psalm 68.
But
Because Psalm 68 now, the spiritual aspect of it is where Marcus Garvey did declare in his declaration in his newspaper at the coronation. He said, right now, the psalmist has declared that prince and princesses shall get out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall soon stretch forth their hands unto God. This is what him said. And we now must rally around Emperor Rastafari. This is what Marcus declared in his newspaper on the first Sunday after the coronation. And in the Emperor's Defense, 1941, Ethiopia Liberation Day, he declared that. He said, today is a day when Ethiopians are truly stretching forth their hands and heart unto God in thankfulness and in joy, fulfilling that very psalm. And that Psalm 68, which we declare as the Emancipation Psalm, is lodged within the Rastafari creed. Very significant indeed.
Rastafari. Yes, so let me ask the Honourable Majesty. So the rebirth that the is talking about, is that the inception of Rastafari now within Jamaica and the rest of the diaspora?
Yes, Rastafari is the rebirth, the return of identity, because we're not talking about dressing up looking like a European. The very lax, the tradition going straight to ancient Israel, the black house of Israel, even showcasing even the pharaohs of Egypt. When you look on the history of them, you see them in a locks and beard same way. But coming from the perspective of the black house of Israel, because all of that link up even into the very constitution of Ethiopia. When you read Article 1, the revised Ethiopian Constitution, Article 1, declaring the empire, Article 2, declaring the linkages to the union between the Queen Makeba of Queen Sheba of Ethiopia and King Solomon, King David of Israel. That is written into the Constitution, Article 2. For sure, say, I and I carrying on the legacy of the black house of Israel. So that rebirth now is not just a figment of the imagination, it's a livity where I and I start to live anciency and step forward up that covenant of even the separation of the dreadlocks and the image of anciency. And you find that in the books of Leviticus 19, Leviticus 21, in Numbers chapter 6, the Nazarite vow. So all of that anciency of the rebirth now is the rebirth of the black house of Israel rising.
My Lord, Rastafari.